All right, we're recording. So today is December 21st, and I am here interviewing Mr. Marlo Diosmito. The first question is when and where were you born?
I was born in Manila in 1970, July 3rd.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
So
so,
I think it was a hospital in Manila. So I don't remember because I was not just kidding. Yes. No, from what I was told by my mom. Okay. Yes.
Mhm. So how would you describe the household that you grew up in?
Uh, okay. So my life's a little bit complicated. It's almost like a novel, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I told your class a little bit about it, right?
Hmm.
So yeah. So my dad, he was very wealthy. When I was, from what I was remember when I was born, he used to have a film production in the Philippines. He
Hmm.
actually he's rich, and my mom together. And then when I was 5 years old, I was just flown back to nowhere in somewhere in Mindanao, which is like in the middle of nowhere.
Could you spell that, please?
Second,
Could you spell
General
that?
Santos City. That's the name of the place. General Santos City.
Mhm.
It's in the southernmost tip of Mindanao. It's on Sarangani Bay. It's actually Manuel. I don't know if you heard of Manny Pacquiao. He's a boxer and so on. He's actually from that area.
Mm.
And yeah, so it's a place where I do remember when I was a kid, there's no electricity. Roads are not paved. There may be like 4 or 5 transportation jeepneys that goes around the city. And
Hmm.
it's every 1 hour or 30 minutes or something like that that you really have to wait for
Uh-huh.
they get there. So that's where so 5 years old, I was sent to my grandmother who lived there. We don't have our house is like a hot floor is like it's really like dirt, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And bamboo slats and so on, and you sleep on the floor, stuff like that. And we walk. I was 5 years old, and then I was sent to school. That was first grade. They put me in first grade. We sometimes walk to school about 3 miles, I think I would say, or 4 miles away, because there's no school bus. If there's a jeepney, then there is a jeepney, whatever. So that's what I remember. So I didn't see. So that was when I was a kid. So I didn't see my dad. Every time I asked about my parents, I would say, "Oh, they're working in Manila. I'm gonna go back to Manila soon because we have a nice house in Manila." And then suddenly I'm living in a place where we have an outhouse as a restroom. You know what I mean? We don't even have a bathroom. We have to pump our water
Oh,
and
wow.
so on. We get chickens in the yard. We garden. There's snakes. In fact, I do remember a lot of cobras. I'm not kidding. There's like sometimes the snake would get inside the house. That was so scary. I do remember that when I was a kid.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but it is. Yeah, it's because it's a hut and like the next neighbor is like several meters. I mean, it's like grassland and trees and something like that. We even have fireflies still, and it was Gerald Santos before was pretty tiny, maybe about 50,000 people for the
Mhm.
whole city or even less. But it's a very, very small town where everybody knows everybody. Like we know everybody who lives on the street from like more than a mile away.
Mhm.
So you know what I mean? So when you ride the public transportation, you would say you have to tell them where you're gonna get off to the family or like our house. Every time my grandmother would ride a jeep, she would just say, "Oh, just drop me off in Obed's house." That's my grandmother's last name, but they
Mhm.
know where that is. It
Uh-huh.
was weird. Yes,
It's a very small town, basically.
a very small town. We know the name of the drivers. We know the name of everybody. We know the people in the market. It's weird. Now it's like a city. I went and visited after my mom died, like the year after. It's now I won't recognize the city.
Mm-hmm.
Now a city of maybe 500,000
Oh, wow.
something or even more. Yes, yes. I don't even ever know the neighbors anymore. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So where were your parents born, and do you know if they had like a similar experience to yours growing up?
Oh, from what I know, my father, because I haven't met I didn't see my father again till I was in college.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up with my grandmother, and it was a farm. Then I would think I was 9 or 10 years old when my mother suddenly showed up
Mm-hmm.
in our house. Yeah, in my grandmother's house, and it turned out that they separated,
Uh-huh.
and we didn't know about it. We didn't talk about it. It's something that we don't mention or talk about in our house.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's you know how it is in an Asian community.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always a stigma about parents separating.
Yeah.
So it's something that, in the community, even I didn't know. So every time people would ask, they would just say, "Oh, my father works in Manila." And when I got to high school, I suddenly like kind of realized like, oh, there's something missing here. There's
Hmm.
something wrong, right?
Yeah.
So when I was in college, I got a scholarship to go to the University of the Philippines. That's when I met my dad, and that's when I got to know more about him, but slightly, I would say, because I didn't really live with him. So, in
Oh,
fact, the weirdest thing is the first time he saw me, he asked me if I have money so we can eat lunch. And
mm,
that was so sad because number one, I don't have money. Number two, I was on scholarship, university scholarship. So I only live on the stipend the university gives me, which is
mhm,
about $10 a month.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I work part time, and I got a scholarship. I mean, the tuition is free to begin with. The tuition, the books, and so on. They provide me everything
Mhm.
except for my daily living. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Mhm. So do you have any siblings?
I do. Yeah, I have. Oh, that's another sad story. Okay, so people. Well, I don't know if I told your class this, but it's really like So when my mom and dad separated, so we were the first one who was sent to Mindanao. Then
Mm,
after that, my other two siblings. So it was me and my younger sister. She's still in Mindanao actually right now.
mm,
We were first sent to live with my grandmother. Then about several months or years after, then my two other siblings came in, my older brother and my older sister.
mhm,
So they came in and lived with us, and one of my younger brothers. So three of them came in. And then what happened after that? Oh, so there's like six of us now, right?
yeah.
So then I found out that we have a seventh brother, the youngest one, which actually was left in the hospital after he was born.
Oh,
And
wow.
we never heard about him. I mean, every time I asked my mom about it, she would cry and she would get mad. So
Mhm,
again, it's something that we never talk about in the family, but I insist and my siblings insist. And all we know is, and nobody would tell us, none of our elders. We think about it, we were kids, so we have no idea and we don't know what to do.
mhm,
So all we know is the guy, my younger brother was left in the hospital. Then he was apparently adopted by one of my cousins, which I
mhm,
don't even know who, because he was my apparently cousin from the father side.
mhm,
And if I ask my family members in the father side who I'm not close to because I never really live with them or
mhm.
never get to know them, they won't tell us. So it's a kind of a sad situation. So until now, we don't know where our younger brother is.
Yeah.
So, but
Sad.
what they said is he was adopted. He moved to the United States. So I'm
Mhm.
hoping that one of these days I'll find him. So every time I see somebody with my last name, I would always ask.
Aw.
Yeah, I would kind of research.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so maybe I would see him one of these days.
Mhm. So you said you lived with your grandmother, right?
Yeah, I
So,
live with my grandmother. Yeah,
mhm,
and my grandfather, I would say.
mhm.
Yeah.
So what do
And
you?
aunts and uncles. So it's like a extended family house. So we all live in one house. It's like two bedrooms, and there's like about maybe 10 of us, maybe or eight of us.
Wow.
It's a small house. Yeah, it's
Uh,
typical like Asian. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And so, like, what would you say are some of the values that your grandmother brought you up with, or your grandfather?
I would say hard work and perseverance. I would say you
Hmm.
persevere, you live within your means because we really didn't have anything, but we still always like there's always a hope. I would say that you
Hmm.
get better. That's exactly what she always tells us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, hard work. That just keep on doing your best in everything that you do. I think that's one thing that she always instills in us. It's like you do your best in everything that you do.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I mean,
Hmm.
come to think of it, really, like before I'm afraid to talk about this, by the way, Leah. I mean, even when I first, like even in college, I never talk about this because I'm ashamed of what happened to my family. But you need later on realize that it's not my fault. Somebody told me that, like, eventually I got the catharsis of like understanding that, hey, what happened in my family is beyond my control,
Yeah.
but I have control over my own future.
Hmm. That's
Yeah.
very true. Mhm.
Maybe that's the reason why you kind of know me as I am at PBA or schools, right?
So about like your earlier education, like primary and secondary school, like how would you describe your experience at school in the Philippines?
I would say it was okay. So I truly enjoy schools. I enjoy science and math. I would say that I'm ahead of my class in reading when I was a kid. In fact, I told you I graduated early because I kind of like, I get into the mode of learning earlier. I actually went from sixth grade and I went straight to high school. You know what I mean? I skipped the middle school. Um, but the other thing that also something that was difficult for me is the fact that there are a lot of activities where they require. I went to a Catholic school,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and there's a lot of activities where they require parents to be there, and my parents were never there because number one, my mom was still, I would say, languishing over her separation,
Mm-hmm.
and she doesn't want to see people, or she lives in a chain, kind of like at the back of her. There's this kind of idea of like, I don't want people to ask me about where my husband is.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. And I also found out, by the way, that my mom was the second wife, and in Asia, it's kind of like in the Philippines, there's a stigma about being second wife before, and kind of she's a kind of ashamed of that, I would say.
I see.
That's why she never attends any of our, and also didn't have money, so every time there's a extracurricular event, we can't participate.
Mm.
So I really just focus on academics. That's all I can do.
Yeah.
Yes, and my teachers and nuns have favorites. Oh, always, you know what I mean? They like people with money, and they like people who can donate, and we can't. So, but it's still okay. I mean, in general, I would say I joined competitions and I won, which for me, those are the things that I kind of cherish when I was in school, despite the fact that I can join the other things, but I focus on other things that I can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. And so you mentioned some of these, but like what were some other challenges that you faced, like academically or socially or
Socially, so again, being the fact that having without a lot of parental support, you're practically on your own. You're always, I would say, insecure with so many things that your classmates have, and you don't. Think about, you're a kid, right? And you see your classmates having this brand new shoes, or we maybe get to buy shoes every other year. I
mm-hmm.
have to wear my shoes till it's like, the sole is like almost almost like open, like that. I can no longer like totally wear it. If the shoes like partially opens or to get tears or something, we find a way to like fix it
Uh-huh.
until it's totally, because we didn't have money, okay, and all my clothes are hand me downs and so on. So socially I didn't fit in terms of my classmates always have new things, and being in a private school, Catholic school, you kind of like have classmates who can afford like whatever the teachers ask us to bring, especially for class projects.
Mm-hmm.
That's why even in your class, when if there's a class project that your classmates can bring, I would volunteer to bring it for them because I know how it feels when I was a student when I don't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally can't, you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
can, like, we have an art class, but the problem is I don't have art supplies.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just imagine how it looks like. You know what I mean? I would improvise, and I think that's how I learned how to improvise a lot of things.
I see.
Yeah.
Can
Yes.
you give me the name of the school real quick?
It's Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Notre Dame school. Can you believe that? It's Notre Dame of Lagao. Yeah. Lagao is Lago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's the name of the school, Notre Dame of Lagao. And then high school is the same school. It's like for boys. So the elementary school, it was a co-ed, but when I went to high school, it's all boys school.
Mm-hmm. I
It's
see.
actually run by same organization that runs the Mary School in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also St. Joseph in I think it's in Harlingen, I think, or in Brownsville. Same school.
That's cool.
So same organization, like the religious organization that runs those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um, the next question is: have you felt because of the U.S.'s and Philippines like complicated relationship? Have you felt the U.S.'s influence growing up, like politically, culturally, socially?
100%, because you know why? Our school is run by Marist brothers,
Uh-huh.
and they're all then several of them are Americans. So it's really like almost it's almost like an American run school. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So yeah. So our everything that we do, reading, textbooks, everything's American. When I was there,
I see.
well, the books that we read about apples and grapes and so on, and we don't have apples in the Philippines. We do have grapes, okay, but no apples or strawberries or cherries, stuff like that. We talk about snow and we talk about dollar, but our money's not dollar. So it was an interesting kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So and it's also it's an American run school.
I see.
Yeah.
Did you,
Yes.
are there any examples of like activities or places also like
Like what do you mean?
also
Activity?
influenced by the US, like what you did, like
Oh,
activities
we
for fun or something like that,
activities that we do.
or places?
Oh, it's a religious school, so we do a lot of and everything religious. From we have the month of the Rosary in October. We have the yes, we have the we all have all these religious holidays that we have to attend to. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Christmas pageant, stuff like that. Competitions like religion quiz. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we those are most of our activities are evolve around the Catholic Church and the Catholic religion. So because it's a Catholic run school.
Yeah.
So growing up, it's really that. It's all boils around that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So trying to remember actually, even Boy Scouts. We did have boys camping. Yeah, I do remember because I attend those camps. However, they require the father to be there, but I don't have my father, so I can stay overnight. I
Mm-hmm.
would join the morning camp, and then I cannot stay overnight because I don't have my father with me. So those are the things I kind of feel bad about
I
because
see.
I truly enjoy outdoors and camping and
Mm-hmm.
adventures like that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. That was elementary, right? High school, I joined the military training, so that was fun.
You did military training in high school?
Oh, yep. I was in the military training in high school. I
Wow.
graduated as an officer.
I see.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so like outside of school, would you say those are the things you did for fun, like camping and outdoor activities or?
You can't do that. I mean, seriously, we didn't have money, and okay. So since my family, he really didn't have any money, so we survived by farming and we have a poultry of about more than up to like 20,000 chicken heads, I would say.
Wow.
So we raise chickens, we sell them. We actually wake up early in the morning, and this is true. Even elementary grades, we would wake up about 4 or 3 in the morning. We slaughter the kitchen by hand. We
Mhm.
slaughter the chicken, we clean them, and then they get sold in the market or whatever. After that, sometimes we have to water the plants that we sell. We
Mhm.
have because my mom sells orchids and flowers and so on.
Mhm.
Or sometimes they do catering, and we also have to help.
Yeah.
And that was even when I was a kid. We also have pigs, so we also have to take care of that. And then we have 3 cows that we have to put in a pasture before we leave for work or before we leave to school. And then we have to come home early because you're dealing with animals, right? In
Mhm.
the farm, so they have to be fed. They have to be, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So really, we don't have social life in high
Wow.
school. Even in high school, my only social life was everything related to school.
Mhm.
So that's why I joined the military training. That's my respite from like housework.
Mhm. I
Yeah.
see.
Yes.
Last question about this section. Are there any memories that from your time growing up that kind of stand out to you or that you think are important?
I mean, including high school, I would say, or elementary school.
Both. Either
Both
which
high school. How would I say it? Actually, I would say several. I mean, I just enjoy school. The fact that I I do well in terms of all my friends are there, and I only get to see them when I'm in school. I
one.
was in several leadership position when I was in upper grades. Finally, like when I was in the junior year in high school, I finally get to join like clubs and organization.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, we again all related to religious organization, which is like choir.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like church choir. What else did we join? We have like called a fraternity, but it's all related to religious of Virgin Mary, kind of like fraternity. So
Mhm.
all we do is pray and have a retreat, and those are the things that I enjoy because I get to hang out with my friends that are also from school.
Mhm.
And also we joined the military training, which we do a lot of hiking camps. We stay in school overnight. We do some like rappelling. We call it rappelling. I think it's like a rope where you actually have to crawl between two hills, and then if you fall, you drop in the water, like running water or river or something. Yeah, that was fun for me. It was. I enjoy those things.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So,
All right, moving on to your education portion of the interview. So, how did you come to decide to study at the University of the Philippines?
it's my way to. Okay, so first, do you know my mom doesn't want me to go to Manila? That's the first thing. Actually, they wanted me to stay in the small town where I grew up because I got a scholarship there too.
Mm-hmm.
But I told them that I really need to leave because my if I stayed in General Santos, I know that I won't be able to leave and be myself, succeed in my own way because there's a lot of hindrances if I stayed in General Santos. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? I'll be tied to the family in terms of what we do and the culture and it's the culture in the small town is very different from a city, I would say. Plus opportunities, plus connections, and so on. So
Mm-hmm.
University of the Philippines is the number one school in the country. So I got when I got a full scholarship, I was so happy because it's very hard to get in to begin with. They only get like how many percent? Maybe 4 or 5% of
Oh
the
wow. Mm-hmm.
people who apply. Yes, and you have to take the test. It's almost like an IQ exam. And yeah, when I got in, plus they offered me a scholarship. It's called the presidential scholarship. So when I got in, I told them I need to go to Manila. So my mom said, no, we can't afford to pay for where you're gonna stay because because we have to pay for the lodging or housing and so on. So we found my grand aunt, and she agreed to um, she agreed for me to stay with her. And first, but there's like several other like second cousins and third cousins who live there. It's a big house, but I have to sleep in the garage.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I said, it's okay. I don't care. I would stay wherever for as long as I can be in Manila.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's Manila is like the other end of General Santos. General Santos is way south. General Santos is actually closer to Malaysia than in Manila
Uh-huh. Oh
or
wow.
Indonesia. So it's like really south of the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You said earlier that small town culture is different from big city. Like, how would
Mhm.
you compare like your town from the Manila?
Oh, Manila is cosmopolitan, very international.
Mm-hmm.
General Santos is very, how would I say, very local, very parochial. It's still, what I mean, everybody knows everybody. Everybody lives in a culture of like, go to the market, everybody knows what you buy, kind of that kind of community.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
and also there's not a lot. Oh, we don't have. We didn't even have a television channel when I was growing up. We listened to radio
Oh.
drama. Can you believe that? I didn't get we didn't get electricity till I was in high school or late high school.
Oh wow.
So that's how backward my small town was during the time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, when I came back, they already have a McDonald's and Starbucks. I was so like, oh, man, this is very different when I was growing up. Because I left General Santos and kind of like I never lived there again. I mean, well, I did because I worked for Dole, but Dole was a different place. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because Dole is like, um, it's not far from where I grew up, but it's a different town.
Yeah.
It's a small American community, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So did you know that you always wanted to study chemistry, or like what led you to STEM?
Okay. I really wanted to be an airline pilot. Nobody know. Did I tell you that? Your
No.
class? I didn't tell your class, right? I
No.
always wanted to be an airline pilot, and I actually passed the test. And I qualified, except for the fact that when I wanted to do it, I weigh 100. Sorry, about 100 pounds or 90 something pounds. I was underweight because I told you like we were not well fed. Were undernourished because of the fact that growing up we didn't have a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even like food is everything's rationed in our family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, growing up and so on. I was actually surprised. I was surprised that I was able to still think and thrive For the fact that we were all undernourished, maybe all the vegetables, yes, that I'm eating. Yes, but yes, so I did not qualify. And then the other option is BS Math, chemistry. What's the other one? Computer science. And I wanted to take computer science, but I also worried that I may not have the resources to pay for computers, laptops, so on.
Mhm.
So I said, oh, I'll take chemistry.
I see.
And I also love chemistry. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
The
is
other
there?
option was I was thinking of going to pre-med, but well, I can't afford it. So
Mhm.
yeah.
And so you said that you also did a dual degree in between math and chemistry.
Yep.
Like, did
Hmm.
you
Yes.
decide math
Yeah.
later, or?
Math was more of secondary. I also enjoyed math. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's why I became a math major and chemistry major.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's really more on chem. It just so happened that I need about 2 or 3 more credits to get a degree in math. And I said, okay, let me just take it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I
So
see. So also back then, did you know that you wanted to be a teacher?
no, that was like one of my last priorities, I would say. Because if I was because okay, if you're in the Philippines, teachers are respected, but they're underpaid. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So unlike in Singapore or in Hong Kong, maybe, or in Taiwan or Korea, where teachers are really paid well,
Hmm.
in the Philippines they're not paid well.
Hmm.
Yeah. So however, I got the opportunity to work at a refugee camp, and that
Hmm.
actually made me truly love the profession.
Yeah,
Yeah, I fell in love with teaching when I was working at the refugee camp.
that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so thinking back to your time as an undergrad, is there a defining moment for you that you think strongly impacted your career decision, or?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, think about like coming from a small town. Very insecure, very small. I mean, like me being underweight, so thin, and fresh from the province. I would say they call it the FOB, fresh off boat, or fresh. Yeah, I mean, going to a big city from a small town, and also my classmates come from like private schools in Manila, which is more cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
I mean, they're more fluent in English than I am because my teachers, we learned English in school, but I mean, they're not that fluent, I would say. You know what I mean? Of course, I have a very strong math and science background, but not in languages. So you feel kind of insecure being in a classroom full of like bright, talented, and brilliant students around me. You know what I mean? Because University of the Philippines is one of the hardest school to get in, but at the same time, everybody who gets there are scholars.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? They're all brilliant, they're smart. However, when I was there, I kind of realized that, well, I can compete with anybody except in languages because they're more advanced in languages than I am.
Yeah.
Even in my Spanish class, my classmates do speak Spanish fluently, and I'm barely learning the language. Yeah.
Yeah.
In my English class, I do remember my first English class at the University of the Philippines. Everybody was exempted in the final exam except me.
Oh,
And I took it as an insult, but at the same time as a challenge.
that's good.
I
Yeah.
told, yeah, I told myself like, man, this is tough. I need to do something. Yes. But at the same time, though, on the other hand, I'm also tutoring my classmates in chemistry or in mathematics.
Hmm.
So you know what I mean. That's how I earn some money in college, is by tutoring other people,
I see.
yeah, on something that they can't do. So I was thinking like maybe I'm bad in one thing, but at least I'm good in other things.
Hmm. Yeah,
So that gave me confidence. Yeah.
that's good. All right, so we're going to move on to the time when you started working at the refugee camp, but right before that, is there like a time between when you finished college and before you started working, and what happened in that time?
And you know what? You know, that's a funny story because actually I was thinking like I'm about to graduate and I need to find a job right away because I remember I told you where I stayed in college.
Hmm.
I stayed with my grand aunt, and I actually practically like sleep in the garage, or sometimes in the kitchen, or sometimes in the living room, wherever I can.
Hmm.
There's a cot, and that's all I had. And my cousin, nobody in that house actually goes to school. Like my cousin who were there, he's a dropout, and so on. It's a hell house, I would say. I mean, I appreciate my grand aunt for allowing me to stay there. It's a big house, I know that she's really she's wealthy, but at the same time, a lot of people are people and help them, but the people she's helping are not helping themselves. So they spend gambling the whole day, they drink and so on. My cousin would wake me up 2 in the morning and ask me to buy stuff for him, despite the fact that I have school the next day. So I really want to get out of the house. You know what I mean? So when I found out that I'm actually about to graduate, I started looking for a job, and lo and behold, so I applied like about 3 or 4 weeks before my last day of school. I got hired right away.
Mm-hmm.
And the opening was a refugee camp. I actually applied to work at McDonald's. I applied to work at Jollibee, which is like the fast food restaurant, stuff like that, anywhere for as long as I can get something. And I saw an opening, and it's with the United Nations, and I saw, let me try this because they're looking for any college graduate.
Mhm.
So I did apply, and I got hired, and they said you will start on this day. And I said, oh yeah, that's like the day after my last day of school.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay,
So
so basically no time at all.
no time at all. Yeah, no break. I'm so happy actually. I was very happy that
Uh-huh.
I got a job that is like the next day after my last day of school.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we went to, it's like somewhere in the mountains actually, like somewhere in Bataan, like about about 4 hours from Manila.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's next to their U.S. base.
So it's relatively close, yeah.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
So it's like the camp is like just outside the U.S. base in the Philippines.
Hmm.
Yeah.
See. So what was everyday life like just teaching in the camp? And like, could you just describe a typical day?
So imagine I was there. I was so young. I have no idea what I'm doing there. Even my friends who actually remembered me being there, they say like, we thought you were just like a kid, like, walking around the camp or something. But anyway, so yeah, they gave us training for about 2 weeks. We actually immersed into the Vietnamese culture, Vietnamese, or not just Vietnamese. It's the Indo-Chinese culture, which includes the Lao and the Khmer, which is Cambodian.
Hmm.
So we live in their billets, so we see how their life is like. We get to know their why they're refugees and so on. So from there on, they taught us like skills on how to help them, or
Hmm.
teach them, or reach out to them.
Hmm.
Yeah. So we teach half a day. The other half of the day is spent on planning or training.
Hmm.
Compared to our school at PBA, where I teach from 7:50 to 4 or 3:30. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
In the camp, we teach from like 7:30 to about 11:30, I think, or 12.
Hmm. Wow.
And in the afternoon, all you do is training or planning or something. And
Uh-huh.
we sometimes do that at the beach because the camp is not far from the beach. So we just like haul and take our stuff at the beach and plan there. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Or if you're teaching in the afternoon, then in the morning you can like prepare everything, and then in the afternoon you teach.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was I would say it was a very rewarding experience, I would say, because I learned a lot
Mhm.
about reaching out to kids, about you know what I mean, understanding cultures before you actually design any instructional agenda. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Understanding your students. What else did I learn there? Um, yeah, just being thoughtful about everything that you do in a classroom to be able to reach out to your kids or to your students. Yeah, that's something that I learned from that camp, from the refugee camp.
When you say the cult, like being aware of people's cultures, like can you be more specific about like how that played into
Okay,
your teaching?
think about some of my students. I have students who are Amerasians.
Mhm.
You know what Amerasians are?
Mhm.
These are, yeah. So their children. A lot of them have similar background that I did have, when they have their moms, they don't know who their father is or haven't met their father. But unlike me, at least I went to school and I wasn't ostracized completely by the society. Make sense?
Mhm.
But these kids are ostracized by the Vietnamese community during the time, because Vietnam during the time was a strict Marxist
Mhm.
government. They're very communist. They come from a communist government that actually discriminates anybody with relationship with the United States after the war, during the war, and so on. So including the Amerasians. So they weren't given any opportunity. A lot of them are street kids. So some of them are like 16, 17 years old, non-literate. And we have to teach them how to read, how to write, how to count, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they have a lot of trauma behind them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or they carry the trauma that they carry with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to handle the trauma, the psychology of the kids, and at the same time making sure that before they leave my classroom, because I only have them for 6 months and then they migrate to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Or some of them actually go to France, or some of them go to Norway, wherever they're heading, but majority are in the United States. So in that small amount of time that they're with me, I have to make sure that they're successful and get like the basic skill for them to be able to survive in United States.
Mm-hmm.
So with that in mind, I would have to be very specific about what skills do they really need.
Yeah.
So I work with the social worker. I work with, and we kind of identify the skills that they need to have.
I see.
Yeah, so it's very tough. At the same time, also we're thoughtful of like, what do they know, what were their experience. For example, I know for a lot for a fact like my kids in the refugee camp, so a lot of them are intelligent, except that they just don't have the basic skills
Mm-hmm.
when they're coming to me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I have kids who know how to count money, but they don't understand what money is, or what do you mean by when you say what 1 and 2 and 3. When you write it down, they won't understand what it is, but if you show them money, they know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's tough.
I see.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time though, working with them made me realize about, made me think about, how important hope is in life, because a lot of them, despite the fact that they've been through a lot, they're still hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, for me, is something that I would never forget.
Mm-hmm.
There's always hope in every situation.
That's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of based on that, like, are there any students or classes that you remember that stand out in your mind as like?
Oh, a lot. All of them, actually. Yeah, I have kids. In fact, I'll show you some pictures. Like, I think I still have those pictures where during graduation, when they leave my class, they would cry and they would.
Oh.
I mean, it's just an amazing experience. I'll give you one funny example. When we were there, my first year teaching experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was teaching math, but I also have friends who are teaching American studies. So
Mm-hmm.
we work together as a community, as a group of teacher. We don't teach in isolation. You know what I mean? Even if I teach math or I teach science, and then they teach social studies, or we try to work together. And one of the things we try to help them is these are teens, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're about I don't know, maybe 13 to 18 years old in that group, and they have no idea what American culture is. Because when they left Vietnam or Cambodia or Laos, they really have no vision of how everything is in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did was we look into like the current trends in fashion in the United States, and we borrowed some clothes and we made them do a fashion show.
Oh.
That was funny. And it was like, we have to look for shoes, we have to look for like the appropriate outfit, and I don't have any, because I don't have any clothes. That was my first job, so I don't have tons of clothes. We tried to like look for whatever we can come out with, and we did a fashion show. And then for the students, they felt so different during that time. I mean, the joy that they have and the confidence, and what they come out with being in that fashion show was so different. That was when I was teaching American studies, which funny is I've never been to the United States then, but being taught by Americans and reading all American books, they made me teach American studies.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a study about, I did the kids that do a role play about American history.
Mm-hmm.
And come to think of it now, it's full of flaws. When I was asking them to do their role play,
Mm-hmm.
talking to Mancheck, I realized like, oh my God, Mancheck saw the play that I did with my kids, they're full of like, prejudice and bias.
Uh-huh.
That was like, it was funny.
That's sweet. The fashion show is a really sweet idea.
Yeah, I'll show you the pictures. It is
Sure.
one of those, moments that I can't forget with my students.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And then when they're so sweet. Like when they graduate, they always have parties. They'll invite you to their house just to show that they're grateful and so on. It was, and I know for a fact that it's difficult for because they have nothing. Also, they even have, you know what I mean. Think about it. They're refugees. They have no work. They have no money and so on. All they have are ration from the United Nations, and
Mhm.
whatever they have, they make the best out of it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's different. That's why I from then on I really told myself like this is if education's like this, if teaching's like this, and I would love to have this job.
Mhm.
You should know for a fact that you're not just only making a difference in somebody's life, but you know what I mean. You're part of somebody's life
Yeah,
in general.
it's really noble. Yeah.
We actually how many years ago was that? That was before Miss Delulu and I went to Singapore. I think you were a sophomore then. I think I had a problem with my sinus infection and so on, and I went to see a doctor, and I found a doctor somewhere close to where I live here. I live somewhere in Saifair,
Uh-huh.
and that doctor was from the camp, the refugee camp.
Oh
He
wow.
used to be a student there. Yeah, he used to be a student there. One of my friends actually was his teacher, and yeah, now he's a doctor. I actually have several former students who are now doctors too, and they're doing well in the United States.
That's really nice.
So think about this. Some of them escaped by boat, right? I mentioned that to your class.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, they escaped by boat, and they that was sad. They escaped by boat and they got stranded in the ocean. So just as some of their siblings died, you
Mm.
know, some of them resorted to cannibalism. Some of them actually escaped through the route of Laos, then the mountains, or Cambodia, and then the mountains going to Thailand. And then when they get to Thailand, they get because they have to go through like landmines. Some of them would lose their limbs. There are even some of them who get how they kidnapped for prostitution in Thailand,
Mm.
and it's a it's a situation that's really like so to fathom. That's why I don't understand it when people say that they don't support refugees or they thought people just want to escape their country for the sake of going to the United States. They don't realize that they have to go through a lot and there must be something that's really happening to them for them to make a decision to leave their country.
Mhm. Um, um, yeah, that's really interesting stories. Yeah.
I think that's the best job experience I ever had. I would say,
Yeah.
yeah. Unfortunately, the camp has closed though. So
Oh no.
yeah, I was only there for 2.5 years.
Is there a name for the camp?
Yeah, it's a it's a United Nations refugee program. It's in Bataan.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually the name of the camp is PRPC, Philippine Refugee PR. Okay, Philippine Refugee Processing Center.
Uh-huh.
It's Philippine Refugee Processing Center. I actually went back to the site of the camp. Now it's there's a park there, and the rest are they were taken over by the forest.
Mm-hmm.
So the camp kind of like disappeared, which is sad. And even the house where we used to live is gone.
Mm.
So because it's in the mountains.
Yeah. Right. Moving on from that job, you went to teach at the Dole Philippine School. So
Oh
how
yes,
how
yeah.
did you come to teach there?
Oh well, I mean, I don't know even why I left the camp, but again, at the same time, I was looking for more challenge, I would say,
Yeah.
and better pay. Yeah, so that's another one I'm looking for. Or maybe because like I really don't. At that time, I was thinking like I want to go back to perhaps the lab
Mm-hmm.
and go working for Dole allows me to do that too. You know what I mean? Because Dole is a food company, and I can teach and I can at the same time do something for the lab. And yeah, the pay was a lot better. We stayed in a camp that is, oh sorry, Dole has a housing by the place is beautiful. I would say the kids are all expats. That's our students, are children of the executives of the company.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like Australians or New Zealanders or Japanese or Americans or Filipinos, but they're all like the top notch, like vice president, you know what I mean, or
Okay.
superintendent, stuff like that, general manager. Their kids go to that school, and it's by the foot of an extinct volcano. It's really beautiful. It's a golf course area, like housing by the golf course, pine trees. It's nice. It's an enclosed community, and they have guards everywhere,
Mhm.
and they paid for our vacations to Manila regularly, and I mean they fly us for free. Yeah, it was a nice experience, I would say, and I was kind of like enticed by that. Yeah, but at the same time, yeah. So I also I we go to the lab and we get to see the work in the lab, which is fun. It
Mhm.
was fun at the same time, and small classroom size.
Mhm.
However, that's where I actually got to teach like third graders and fourth graders, and then 12th graders at the same time.
Oh.
So yeah, it was crazy. Like in the morning, I would teach like third graders, and then in the afternoon, I would teach pre-cal or chemistry, or
Wow.
physics. It was crazy. But I only have few kids, like maybe 12 kids in a class, or you know, what I mean, the largest class I had is 24, I would say.
Mhm.
So
So what work did you do with Dole on this side?
okay, so I teach, I design whatever curriculum, but also I get to work in the lab with my friends because they do analytical chemistry, so I can do that side too. In a certain, yeah. So they do research, and I help them with the research,
Like
and I get paid extra.
what was
Yeah.
the focus of the research?
Sorry.
What was the focus of the research?
So some of them are on soil analysis because what happens is anything that okay, so they do plant pineapples, right?
Yeah.
And they also do have a banana company or banana plantation in the area or in the region. So they since they put a lot of fertilizer on the soil gets acidic and it loses a lot of organic matter. So they do a lot of testing on the soil
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that it has enough nutrients for the pineapple to actually thrive. That's one. The
Mm-hmm.
other one is water analysis to make sure that there's not a lot of contamination or pesticides leaching into the groundwater.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. The third one that I really love is when they come out with the fruit cups.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the fruit cups that they're selling right
Yeah,
now. I mentioned it to your class, right?
yeah, you did.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, so it's a complicated process, but I only did one part of that job, which is like I helped my friend with the sugar measurements on bricks. Yeah, but the rest is like they do the testing for food. So I saw like the whole process of how you come out with a new product. So from like blind testing, which I did, by the way, at Texas A&M. One of my research, we actually did the blind testing. I told them that yeah, you do the blind testing because that's how they did it with Dove products. But they did it in Japan, and they didn't do it in the Philippines. They did it like in the target market. So you have the right sugar content and the right taste before you actually come up with a final product.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's like finding the right combination of fruits, gelatin, and sugar and acidity.
Uh-huh.
And then also every country that I found out is like, for example, Korea would have a different taste from Japan. And then when they offer the product to Saudi Arabia, they want it even a lot sweeter than the one in Japan. Japan is more sour and less sugar.
Well, that's interesting. I haven't thought about that before. It's like
Yeah.
every culture has their own tastes.
Oh yes, like same thing with soda, right? Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
If you go to Mexico, Coca-Cola tastes differently from like the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's exactly what you start. If you're in a food chemistry, that's something that you need to start thinking about.
It's
Yeah.
interesting.
And the best thing about working for Dole, and the other thing that which I think my advantage over other teachers that I know, is
Mm-hmm.
the fact that Dole is a corporate school, meaning we think like corporate workers. We
Mm-hmm.
think about like bottom line. We think about accountability. We think about like how do we minimize cost in terms of what we do and produce a better product.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? Even in the way we teach, the way we handle resources is very different.
I see.
Yeah, yeah. And
Um,
also we see like the advantages. Like a lot of our kids. This actually when I was working at Dole, that's when I actually had students who competed for the. And this is the coolest thing. We were in the nationals for
oh,
like chemistry Olympiad, physics Olympiad, math Olympiad. My students that I coach, we were competing with the top kids in the whole country. Yeah,
wow.
and some of them actually won, and we would go to international. And it was an amazing experience there. We had the brightest kids. Actually, I told you some of my students are now professors We have several who are now working in in the U.S.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and they're earning more than I do, of course. Physicists, chemists, doctors. But again, their parents are all executives too. So again, what do you expect, right?
Mhm.
They
So
get good parental support. Hmm?
it seems like that refugee experience was very inspiring for you. Like towards your later teaching career, are there things that you also learned from your experience teaching at Dole or that
Other than the fact that I became more serious about teaching when I was there, because in the camp, like what we do is more fun, more of play actually. When every time I go to a classroom when I was in the refugee camp, I think of my job as a really fun, something like I work with kids, I teach them how to read and enjoy. We do a lot of role play, realia, because a lot of them are level one English, which means that they come to class, they don't even understand a word that I'm saying,
Mm-hmm.
but by the end of 6 months, at least they can survive, they can communicate, they can, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, I had to break down everything to like the basics. And maybe that's also the reason why I decided to leave the camp, is because of the fact that I wanted to do something more challenging related to chemistry, related to
Mm-hmm.
science, which I cannot do if I was in a refugee camp.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's why I started when I moved to Dole. I was I became a more serious scientist, or a
Mm-hmm.
more serious, like chemist and mathematician.
I see. Okay, so what brought you to the US?
Oh, after that, actually, I went to grad school.
Oh, yes.
So from Dole, I went to grad school. So I
Mm-hmm.
did a study on environmental. Since working at Dole, I know how contaminated water systems are. So I did analytical studies of waters
Uh-huh.
and did sampling, and you know what I mean. And that's why every time I teach your class about analytical techniques, I do remember my grad school.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, when I was doing all those Beers Law. Do you remember the Beers Law lab?
Yes.
Yeah, we did Beers Law in grad school. I didn't. Yeah, so we did Beers Law. We did a little bit of organic. I mean, I did a lot of organic, synthesis of products. Yeah. Oh my God, there's so many things. I even told your class about the rhinoceros beetles that we collected, put in a blender, and then killed it, and then take out the protein from it. That was so bad. Okay, like live rhinoceros beetle, we have to collect them at night, and then we put them in the blender the next day, and then did a lab on it. That was so sad. I feel
Oh.
bad for the beetles. Yes, we
Mm-hmm.
collected samples underwater. That was so fun. Like what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my grad school, and then I saw an
Where did you
opening
go?
in the second.
Where's the name? What was the name of your graduate school?
It's in Mindanao. It's called Iligan Institute of Technology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's under. It's actually funded by, which is interesting. If you know, Philippines is like Mindanao area. A lot of them are a little bit Islamic,
Mm-hmm.
because during the Spanish times, Mindanao remained to be an Islamic country or Islamic state because of the influence of the Middle Easterners. So they did provided support. They provided support for those universities there.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a lot of facilities. Yeah. So their chemistry program is very strong, and my professors are from Illinois or UCLA, or so they're really good. So that's why I decided to just take my master's there.
I see.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was there, I saw an opening for teaching in the United States, and I've been wanting to really go to the United States because I'm thinking that if I stay in the Philippines, there's a lot of political unrest. And well, I didn't tell you, by the way, when I was in college, we were actually rallying against the Marcoses.
Mm-hmm.
We protested. Yes, we went to the streets to kick out the government, and yeah, and we're hoping that the country would change, but it did not.
When was
Yeah.
this?
That was in 1985,
I see.
when the Marcoses were actually kicked out of the country.
Yeah.
And they cheated on the election, of course. And then the Cory Aquino, she was the first woman president in the Philippines. Her husband was killed by the Marcoses. So
Mm-hmm.
she won the election. And
Oh.
then the other one said, "Oh yeah, she cheated, and he doesn't want to leave in power." But they've been in power for decades. They've stolen a lot of time. The Marcoses, stolen a lot of the country. And then, so the university where I am, being the bastion of, I would say, the intellectuals in the country, we actually protested and protested. We are like a lot of the action started with big universities,
Mm-hmm.
the student leaders and so on. And we were one of those. We would go on the streets, we got hose, we got tear gas and so on, but we never gave up. And that was the time I was still in school. So we would go after school to fight and so on. But anyway, so I was hoping the country would change, but it did not. It got more corrupt. And so I said, maybe I should leave the country and go somewhere else and see what I can do and see if I, you know what I mean, make a difference and do something for myself too. I mean, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did you say
So
you
that's,
played a part in leading some of the protests at your school?
I was more of a follower.
I see.
I would say I go with my friends wherever they go, but I truly believe in
Yeah.
the cause though. And
Mhm.
I'm very passionate about the cause also, but I was not the leader. There are other people who actually led the group.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wish I was the leader, but that time I still haven't found my voice.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because I didn't find my voice, I think, until I was at the refugee camp, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
Because
see.
when I was at the refugee camp, I think about it, I was very young and I got promoted in the job within a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then and the other people who applied for the job were way, way older than me, like 10, 20 years older, and they didn't get the job and they got mad at me. And I said, I have no idea why I got the job. No, I mean, so from being a teacher, that's level one, there's another job which is a little bit higher, and I got the job.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that gave me like a lot of confidence, I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
nice. So was that like right after your graduate school that you went to the US?
yes, in fact, same thing like happened to me undergrad. I left the next day. Kind of a story again.
Wow.
Yes. Actually, I was in grad school. I was already working on my papers to go to the United States. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a difficult process to get to the United States from the Philippines. You know, it's very intensive. A lot of medical tests. We have to get the criminal certification, and that's exactly how I saw how corrupt the Philippine government is.
I see.
Yeah, yeah. For example, for my criminal clearance, they asked me to pay them money. Otherwise, they said they will not release it, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like, you know, I mean, bribes and so on that you have to
Okay.
pay.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous. That's why I said, like, you know, this is the reason why I want to leave the country.
I see.
I can't, I can't, I don't want to be part of a society that is so corrupt.
Mm-hmm. And so what year was that when you immigrated to the US?
2000,
Mm-hmm.
like, I came in the US in July 1, 2000.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just to start
So,
it. Mm-hmm. And what
yeah.
was the first job?
Uh, Teaching at Fawnville Middle School.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I had Jennifer Medrano, that that's
Yeah.
what I was telling you.
Uh-huh.
She even showed me pictures. She showed me a picture of who she was. And I said, "Oh, I do remember that picture because I brought you to a science fair when you were in the middle school. I mean, I made them. I mean, think about it. Like it's a Fawnville. If you know Fawnville in Houston, it's like north side,
Mm-hmm.
Title One. But I made all my students actually did a science fair project, and they went and compete in the city when I was there. And that was the first and last time it happened. Yeah. So that was sad. They don't do that anymore. Yeah.
So when you first arrived here, even though like you've had a lot of international experience and like influence from the US, were there any like cultural shocks
Oh
or
yes, definitely. Okay, let me describe to you the experience of a person who comes from a different country, whose second language is English, right? Coming to the United States, every day you have a headache. Think about it. I mean, I'm not joking. It's really, you can ask I mean, if your parents came here and migrated here, right? Think about like in the United States, everything that you do has to be in the English language. But if English is not your first language, so you have to like in your brain, you have to force it to translate everything in English,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And you don't become fluent until maybe after a year after, or
Mm-hmm.
even more than that, I would say.
Yeah.
right? And then you would only know, and this is very true. I read it somewhere that you only know that you're starting to acclimatize on the culture and the language is if you start like dreaming in the language that you are in. It's true. I mean, people never think of that, but it's actually true. I mean, like when I my first year here, I had a lot of headache. I mean, every time I drive home, my head hurts. And not only that, like adjusting to the culture, our banking system is different. You know what I mean? The way we even McDonald's is different. Like the way we order. I'm telling you, I came here with other Filipinos who were also hired as teachers in Houston ISD. When I first came here, there's actually about 40 plus of us hired to teach only in Houston ISD because they cannot find math science teachers in the district. There's a shortage in the city of Houston for science and math teachers. Think about that. My question is why, right? Yes. Anyway, so when they hired us, so we have to open a bank account. We don't know how to do that. Apply at DPS. We don't know how to do that. We don't have cars, right? When I came here in this country, I only have a suitcase of clothes and $500 in my account. And I have no friends. I don't know anybody. I don't have family here. So all I have is guts, right? My $500 and a job waiting for me. And they didn't pay me until sometime in October or last week of September. So I was here in July. I have to budget that $500 from July to October.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yes. And I have to pay my first month rent and so on. I actually work and waited tables while before the school starts.
Oh yeah, you did? Where?
One of the clubs. I lasted for one night because I don't know what to do. I really have no idea. Like the culture is so different. I gave up after one night.
Oh.
Yeah. I found something else. I mean, like, yeah, I did help some friends, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But it was different. It was very difficult. I mean, even McDonald's. When we were new here, I have friends, Filipino friends who were with us. They went to McDonald's and they were looking for rice because in the Philippines, McDonald's sells rice. Yeah, so just to tell you the cultural shock that we all had when we were here. You know what I mean? And everybody has to go to the Asian market together just to feel good about, you know, like because everybody's afraid of like what, you know, that we might make mistakes when we are in public.
Yeah.
So I took the bus to Fawnville one time, and it took me almost 2 hours to get from where I live to Fawnville.
Oh my God.
Riding Houston bus. Because I live like west side of Houston. Then I have to take the bus to downtown. Then from downtown, I have to take the bus to East Little York, which is like north of Houston. It's more than like I-45 north. Yeah.
Long ways, yeah.
Yes.
Do you think that having the US's influence in the Philippines, like growing up with that, did that hinder or help you in coming?
This is the okay. I always actually I just told my friends, several of my friends here recently, like you know, growing up and when I was in the Philippines, I still do remember like how we look up to the United States as a strong country, as a powerful nation, as a nation of like hope and so on. You know what I mean? Like, however, when you get to the United States, you see a different perspective of how the United States really is like, you know. Yeah. But at the same time, no regrets. The fact that, you know, I had a lot of experience growing up and having like a certain picture of the United States actually allowed me to be, how would I say, acculturate in the country. You know what I mean? Although I had a lot of pitfalls. We're totally like learned the culture, lots of mistakes.
I see.
But it was okay. Yeah. My first year in at Fawnville, I had a coworker. She, this is the weirdest thing. So actually, a coworker. Okay, so we interviewed her for the job, sometime like about May, before the end of the school year, for a position for the following school year, right? So May, we interviewed her, we accepted her. We said, "Oh yeah, we would welcome. We'd love you to have you here in the school." Then when she came to report for work in August, right? So that was like a few months after. I really thought she was pregnant. and I congratulated her. Turned out I was wrong. So that was like the biggest, because in the Philippines we celebrate, people who are pregnant and so on. That
Uh-huh.
was the biggest mistake. The next day she showed up for lunch and then she had like a diet tea. And
Oh.
some of my friends from work were like, Marlo, what did you do?
Oh.
Yeah.
Um,
So
has
yeah.
the way that like you say that you have to like adjust a lot, like how has that changed over, like while you first got here and then like up until now?
Oh, I would say I'm still learning about like the idiomatic expressions, the memes and so on. But again, the United States culture is very dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Even I think your parents or even like, um a lot of things change, like especially with the adolescents, like with the teenagers. Like teenagers in the past, like or even in my 20 years of teaching, the memes change, the classroom culture changes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Pop culture especially is something that you can never catch up. I mean, it's very dynamic. It changes almost every 5 years. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So what's in this this next 5 years will be very different from like what's popular the next 5 years.
Yeah. Huh.
You know what I mean?
See.
Yeah. That's why they were saying like that's so 90s or that's so 80s.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Um, do you think that you've faced any discrimination or feel that you're prejudiced when while first being here?
Well, okay. There are. I mean, there's some there's some definitely some discrimination along the way, and some of them I ignore. Like I still move on and live with my life. Some of them are very blatant. I do remember I have a educator mentor my first year teaching in the U.S. and that mentor told me about certain groups of students United States can never learn, no matter what you do.
Wow.
I do remember that's the first thing she told me, and I proved her wrong. Yeah.
Good for you. Yeah.
Yes, I proved her wrong. Right. I told her that I don't believe that. I mean, I believe in every student's got capacity to learn and be better. Just provide them the opportunity and hope and encourage them.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, but I still see that she's racist, and yeah, but there are some I would say, even among administrators, they tend to you know put you on the side, like
Hmm.
especially Asians. Right? Us Asians, we tend to be very. So they think of us being subservient. They think of our quietness and politeness to be, how would I say it, uh, to be easily manipulated. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
They don't realize that we are very thoughtful. We fight our we fight when we fight our battles. We want to make sure that we're going to win,
Hmm.
and that's exactly what we do. And we know how to work our way to get what we want,
Hmm.
not in the way the Americans do it. Yes. So exactly, and I've seen that a lot in a lot of institutions I've worked with. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? They always underestimate Asians.
I see.
Yeah.
Mhm. Um, did you still stay in contact with your family when you came to here?
Oh yeah, I did.
Mhm.
Which is actually, you know what happens in the Asian with Asians working in the U.S., right? You end
What?
up being their how would I say it, the money earner for the whole family.
I see. Uh-huh.
Yes. In my case, I have to support my mom until she died. Yeah.
Hmm.
And now I'm supporting some of my siblings, especially because it's COVID and they lost their jobs.
Oh no.
So I have to send them money. Yeah.
Yeah. I see.
So that's part of our culture, I guess. We take care of our family.
Hmm. I
Yeah.
see. Um, okay, kind of going back to just focusing on like your career in HISD. So can you kind of outline like you worked at a lot of schools. Can you kind of outline where you did it, like how you came to teach at each place and what did you do and why did you leave?
Why did I leave? Okay. So Fawnville was the first job. I was there for first 2 years. And I mean, that's middle school, right? And I do enjoy working with those kids. In fact, I would say that even the principal loves me there, and I had a great I had a great success in encouraging the kids to believe in themselves. You know what I mean, and to love sciences. We do a lot of hands-on activities at Fawnville. which
Mhm.
is pretty amazing for for that school. We had a garden that they actually explored. It was fun.
Wow.
Yeah. So from there, then I went to a Christmas dinner. I do remember now. So I went to a Christmas dinner and I met a lot of teachers from the Magna School for Engineering.
Mhm.
There was I was there. I was still at Fonville, and they asked me like they told me like, hey, we have an opening next year. Why won't you join us?
Mhm.
And it started from that, and I said, okay, sure, why not? And then from Fonville, I got recruited to move to Booker T. Washington,
Mhm.
and that's where I was started teaching. I said like, oh, I like this because now I'm teaching high school. So, but however, they asked me to teach the engineering program, freshman engineering program, and I have to design the curriculum from scratch.
Wow.
So it was like no curriculum. So I made it into more of an IPC Rube Goldberg project,
Uh-huh.
engineering design. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
we actually we did a lot of we did a production design competition wherein they actually have to make a chocolate factory. So they have to actually come out with a chocolate product, but they have to think of like how much will it cost, shipping, all that, manufacturing, thinking about like all the economics behind producing like chocolate bar or one chocolate product.
Uh-huh.
That was like from scratch, yeah. So we did what else did we do? The egg drop, but we made it economical and engineering design competition. So we
Wow.
did a lot of like the MIT engineering design competition. I got involved with robotics, and the best thing about robotics though is the fact that we travel, we build a robot. It's first robotics,
Mhm.
and I learned a lot about that's where I got to meet a lot of people too, other engineering teachers. It was fun. We did win a lot of times. We get to Atlanta, Georgia. We get to University of Michigan, yeah, for competition, Oklahoma. So we go from like city to city to compete. It was
Mhm.
amazing. It was a really amazing experience. Then I got into the Rice program from Booker T. So I was doing that. Then I got a scholarship to be with the Rice laboratory program for
Mhm.
1 year. So I'll be teaching only one class, but I will be learning about teaching, being thoughtful about my process, understanding the student, culture,
Mhm.
and finding ways to be able to teach them thoughtfully, which is
Mhm.
very similar to the refugee camp. So I'll be teaching only one class, and that was at Lee High School,
Mhm.
which is now Wisdom High School. So
Mhm.
what they did was they gave me a class of kids who either failed IPC their senior year and they haven't passed IC. Maybe they failed like twice, or some of them failed once the class, and they all hate sciences because of the fact that they failed the class and they're upper level and they just want to graduate, but they also are like discipline issues and you know what I mean.
Mhm.
And we have to make them love the class and science and so on and understand the value of why they're learning.
Mhm.
And we were successful at that. I was so happy. That
Wow.
was like my and yeah, there was a program with Rice University. So we learned about teaching, we learned about the grade-based research and
Mhm.
all that with Rice professors,
Mhm.
neurobiology. That was for 1 year.
Wow.
And while I was in the program, I got to observe the class at KIPP
Mhm.
Houston,
Mhm.
and they were starting a high school, and they invited me if I want to join the program and help them build a school. So that's when I got transferred again to KIPP.
Mhm.
So you see what I mean? It's like the process is all like somebody would you meet and then they ask you to join.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's why I got to help start the KIPP program
Mhm.
and KIPP Houston High School, and it was an amazing experience. We created a school. By the way, that Lee High School program, it was amazing. It's a small class. A lot of them are discipline issue, but we never had a discipline issue at school. They
Mhm.
were always excited. They conversed. We learned about science. We learned about the value. But we're learning things,
Mhm.
which is amazing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they came out different from when they first came in.
Wow.
That's where actually I had a student who showed up in my open house. She had a baby, and she's actually feeding her baby with soda. like in a bottle instead of milk. It was soda. Like I have to have a conversation with her about bad nutrition and so on, and she appreciates it. You know what I mean? A lot of them are migrants too. Like maybe some of them are not undocumented. Yeah, in that class, and then we talk about like why it's important for us to value education. So I think that's important. I think in that's one thing missing. I think in education is the conversation piece of like the importance of why we're doing what we're doing. Yeah. So keep the same way. It's a group of also like mostly Hispanics, a lot of African Americans, and I do remember, if I don't know if you remember Miss DeLulio, but Miss DeLulio and I actually created a STEM program, a very strong STEM program at KIP, and we made
You
them
guys put it
compete.
together?
Yes, we competed. We made them. We created a program. She teaches AP Bio. I teach AP Chem. Our kids all do science projects. They did compete. We got kids to MIT. We have kids who actually competed in Silicon Valley and so on. It was a fun program. A lot of work, extended day. Even on Saturdays and Sundays, sometimes I have to work, and I mean, work with kids doing research. But it was very rewarding. But after 7 years, I said I can't do this anymore. Yes.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on what you mean, like what factors you had to consider when you like were creating a curriculum?
Recruiting what? Sorry, creating a
Creating a
curriculum.
curriculum like at KIP.
Okay, so here's the thing. When we decided on, so it's like number one, TA. The TA, this would actually require you to have like first year chemistry, first year science, biology, chemistry, physics, and then you can add other sciences to it. So what we did at KIP is we had biology, we had chemistry, we had physics. Then we decided on like what AP courses can the kids take if they want to go to engineering or pre-med or you know what I mean, or something that would enhance their skills. So we offered a class called Bioengineering and World Health. And these are for kids who are not going to, who decided that they're not going to go into engineering or sciences or STEM, but they need to have enough skill to be able to actually survive the 21st century and understand, the issues with concerning their health, issues concerning about related to health and poverty. You know what I mean? How those two are related. Deciding on like what medications there are, preconditions, pre-existing conditions. Also like how the place where you live in and how your lifestyle can affect your future health. How healthy you're going to be in the future. Also the potential cost and so on. Like what's happening in our healthcare. And you know what I mean? So it was an amazing program that we worked with Rice University. There was actually Dr. Kortum. Do you know her daughter was my student too? Kortum. She was a student, Kate Kortum.
Okay, Cordum, yes.
Yes, her mom was my mentor there.
Oh, wow.
She helped us develop the program, the curriculum. Yeah, so we developed the curriculum from Rice, and then we modified it to suit our students because the Rice program is like way up here. You know what I mean? And our students are somewhere here. So we have to make it somewhere, meet somewhere in the middle where it's adapting to the Rice curriculum, but somewhere where the kids can understand and grasp like the value of design, the value of healthcare costs, or what causes heart disease, and then if you have heart disease, what are the possible, things that you need to do, and things like that. You know what I mean? Not just for them, but for their family. So we created that program, and one day when I was co-teaching the class with Miss DeLulio and another teacher, Bill Gates showed up in our classroom.
Wow.
Yes, that was the highlight of my teaching at KIP. So Bill Gates showed up with his wife, Melissa. They sat in our classroom, they interacted with my students, and then they invited me to be part of the forum where we talk about education and the issues concerning the educational system in public schools. Yeah.
Did you go to that one?
Yes, I did. It was one after. It's the whole afternoon. He stayed with us.
Wow.
Yeah, Bill Gates. That was like, at least I can say I met Bill Gates and I talked to him. Yes, he was so sincere. He really cares about education and about the country, I would say.
Hmm.
having those conversations.
And so, what do you think his answer to that question? Like, what is missing in the U.S. educational system?
What was my response?
Hmm.
I think the biggest factor is well, there's a lot of ills in the educational system in the United States, but I think really is finding the right teachers is the hardest thing.
I see.
We don't. I think you know that too. We need teachers who are truly passionate about what they do and
Hmm.
who truly have a purpose in mind when they get into education.
Hmm. I see.
Yeah, because I think that's what's missing. I mean, if you ask me, I've been in this business for 25 years or more, and I've seen that. Even right now, I'm working with I'm mentoring teachers right now, and I've seen like a lot of the teachers will get into education just because of the vacation and the pay, or they think that it's higher than other careers. But I always tell them that it's more than that, because
Hmm.
you really can make a big difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then after KIPP, you went to PBA directly?
Not yet.
Not yet.
So I was at KIPP for
Okay.
7 years. So we created a program. We won a lot. I mean, I have a lot of kids who did a lot of good things. I mean, we did a program. We developed a program. What else did they do at KIPP? That is where I actually got involved with a lot of research with U of H, with Rice University,
Hmm.
with Texas A&M. So in summers, I did a lot of research on engineering just to update myself. At the same time, develop connection for my kids to be able to work and meet those professors. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
That's how we invite universities into our school, is by also working with the university professors and also myself updating my skills in sciences.
Uh-huh.
Then from KIPP, I got recruited to work for Sci-Fair ISD,
Hmm.
and that's where I work as an instructional coach. So I was out of the classroom for 2 years,
Hmm.
and it was my least like job. Being out of the classroom,
I
working with teachers only. That was the hardest. I would say that was the most difficult job ever,
Hmm.
because of the fact that your hands are tied in terms of what you can do and how you can help the schools.
Hmm.
Yeah. So all we do is like design curriculum and lessons, and then tell the teachers like, yeah, you need to teach this.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And a lot of the teachers don't have the skill to actually teach those courses or those topics.
Hmm.
So you create the lesson. However, if teachers doesn't know the content, then how can they teach the content?
Yeah, I see.
Yeah. So it's tough.
Hmm. You
So I,
mentioned in your resume that you would like design it to incorporate research-based instructional strategies. Can you
yes,
elaborate a little bit more what you mean by that?
research-based instructional strategies. So instead of kids just like learning from textbook, you make them think through the process, like questioning techniques, for example. Like
Mhm.
I think you've seen that in your class, right? I don't give the straight answer right away. I would guide you through like the thinking process. Hopefully, you will catch up later on,
Mhm.
like what it is. And then if you still don't get it, that's the only time I would say it and then explain why. So it's more of like a brain-based research teaching, wherein it's rather than just say, you may help them get or grasp the concept. That's one. Second is doing experiment, but more of like connecting the experiment to what you're teaching.
Mhm.
Yeah. um, that's very hard because number one, even at PBA, because of the fact that since we don't have a lot of time in class, the best way to learn actually is through inquiry-based learning.
Mhm.
But the problem is we don't have time, especially if you're teaching AP classes. So the only thing you can do is like find like what really works and what research would say the best ways to teach are, and then help and guide teachers in terms of like how can they develop their own strategy based on their own personality to be able to teach the course effectively.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that was the hardest thing because a lot of the teachers are not very thoughtful. I
Mhm.
mean, as a teacher, you should hone your own skill and not just adapt to like what other people would tell you. Like, hey, if it works for me, it may not work for anybody.
Mhm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like Mr. Landry is an effective teacher. His style is different from me.
Mm-hmm. I
You know what I
see.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Miss Delulia is an effective teacher. Did you have Miss Delulia?
No, I didn't
Oh,
actually.
you didn't take AP Bio,
I did that with Mr. Zhao.
but not AP Bio.
Yeah, it was AP Bio, but Mr. Luglia
Oh,
left that year.
also, we had Mr. Zhao last year.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, for half of the year. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was sad.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah, Mr. Zhao was a very different style of teaching.
Yeah, for sure. Hmm.
Yes.
So do you think that HISD provides enough opportunities and incentives for teachers' advancement?
Should I answer yes or no? I would say minimum. Yeah, minimum opportunities. Yes,
Okay.
not the same as KIP, or it was not the same as HISD. Before I left for KIP, used to have a lot of resources to actually send teachers for trainings for professional development. When I came back from Sci-Fair, because right after Sci-Fair I went back to KIP. Sorry, right after Sci-Fair I went back to HISD. HISD was a totally different district then.
Hmm.
They don't have a lot of opportunities for teachers. The teachers, a lot that I actually encounter when I came back, are all like tired and haggard and not excited about teaching
Mm.
compared to when I left HISD.
Uh-huh.
So I think the administration has a big effect on how progressive the districts can be.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So if there are any areas or skills that you'd like to be seen made available for teachers, more available for teachers to take advantage of, like what would those be?
Are you referring to like teaching skills, or
Teaching and like, or any changes in administration that you think?
I would say that there should be a stronger relationship or cohort or how would I say it, collaboration. And I totally agree with this. Between teachers, between schools,
Hmm.
or talking about high schools, maybe elementary schools, maybe middle schools, but mostly high schools and universities and community.
Hmm.
And that's something I've seen in Singapore actually that I find to be very effective. Think about think about like what I did and everything that I've done, let's say at Rice, working with professors doing research, which I brought back to your class. Every
Hmm.
time I teach, I can have at least I can cite something that I can tell the kids, like, this content actually works this way, and I've seen it happening. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So it does not become like too abstract to not just the students but also to the teachers,
Hmm.
because a lot of times we're teaching things that are abstract that we're not even aware of like what it is about. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, for example, I've used SEM, scanning electron microscopy, so I know how electrons get excited and so on.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with like electron excitation, but how many teachers have worked with those in
I
the
see.
sciences or science fields? And not only that, for example, if you're an economics teacher, you should be working with business industries, so you can truly create a lesson that is realistic.
Hmm.
I mean, that students can connect with.
So you
So
think,
that's so
sorry,
again.
go ahead. Sorry.
No, no, I was just wondering because I've seen that in Singapore. When Deluli and I went there, I mean, we Nanyang Tech actually did like the upper level. Their kids, their junior and senior high school students are working with the community to be able to make their courses realistic. For example, they have a course in food chemistry, and they're actually really baking. And it's a big bakery, and they talk about like how you modify like certain ingredients to come out with the best product that you want to have, or their audio visual design class creating publicity ads for events in the community.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So these are the things that actually should be realistic. I don't know if PBA. I think in PBA at least you guys work with the HGO, Houston Opera House, and or the Houston Symphony, right?
Like the art areas. Hmm.
Yes, correct,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
But I don't know what the other schools if they're doing it the same way.
Yeah.
So but not only that, but all the other classes or teachers should be actually more actively engaged in the community.
Hmm. I see. Um, let's see. So what did you do right after Sci-Fair?
I went back to Houston ISD actually. So I was after 2 years that work at Sci-Fair, I feel like I'm wasting my time.
Yeah.
I never felt how would I say it? Because one thing about education is you just don't look for, well, money wise it's actually paying well, but again you're not just all about money, right? It's all about also like your, how would I say, self actualization. You feel like you're doing something to the community and you're being effective.
Hmm.
So I decided like I think I'll be more effective if I go back to the classroom, and I'm more excited because I can make a difference in people's lives, and I can create something that is truly functional and model it to other teachers.
Hmm.
And then that's when Energy High School was starting.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I was the first chemistry teacher at Energy High School.
Wow.
So yeah,
You
so
started a lot of programs, yeah.
yes, I did. Yes, yeah, we. I was actually. It's the funniest thing is my class is the only class that actually had a real project-based learning lesson at Energy High School.
Oh wow.
All the other teachers they claim that they're doing PBL, but it's not really PBL. We did an amazing restaurant wars, wherein they look into chemistry, they look at food chem, and they talk about the different chemical reactions and so on. And then they created their own design. They had a restaurant, and then it's a fundraising for a local charity.
Hmm.
So they raised a lot of money. I think they raised like about $3,000 then that night. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So, but again, Dr. Allen recruited me because of Lulio. So I only stayed at Energy for 1 year, and I think our principal was so disappointed. But
Hmm.
again, I can't say no to Mr. Lulio. So that's how I got to PBA.
I see.
Back to PBA. Yes. And now the Lulio is trying to make me transfer to her school again.
The saga continues.
Yes. So you see how I move from school to school to school? You see the
This is
pattern?
Leo.
That's just Miss Lulio. It's like, people or you got excited and
Yeah. Hmm.
they share there. So
I see.
it's all about chasing your own passion, I would say.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you say that you've started lots of STEM extracurriculars at other schools, and you also have at PVA. Um, so can I ask why you decided to sponsor the Asian Pacific American Alliance at PVA?
Oh, okay. So I've never taught in a school where I have a lot of Asian students. And
Hmm.
if you notice, I started working at the refugee camp where all my kids are Asians, right?
Hmm.
And even in the international school, all my students were Asians. But
Hmm.
I'm always fascinated by the Asian culture, and I truly believe that us Asians has a lot of, how would I say it, a lot of lessons to share to other cultures. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Asian culture is actually a lot richer than, and I wouldn't say that. Okay, maybe they would think that I'm just being biased, but I truly believe that Asian culture is a lot richer than any other other cultures
Hmm.
in the Western world. The fact that from food itself, if you go from one Asian country to another, food varies. Like
Hmm.
even teaching at the refugee camp, Cambodian food is different from Laotian and also different from Vietnamese. Totally different.
Yeah.
Each of them has their own distinct taste, distinct flavor. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Dances. I mean, I've seen the dances in Laos, in Cambodia, and in Vietnam, and they're totally different. Even the fact that they're like next to each other and connected by a land. You know what I mean? So I'm fascinated by that, and at the same time, also there's a lot of beauty that we can share in this world. I would say as Asians. The only thing is how do we package it in a way that other people would see and understand and learn.
Hmm.
And that's what I was hoping for APA to do.
I see.
So it's not just food, but also I was actually thinking of now, like like today, I'm gonna tell Isabella. Isabella's in charge now, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Isabella Chang. I'm also gonna tell her about like having a game night or a game day,
Hmm.
wherein each of us would, each country would actually exhibit their own unique game to
Hmm.
the community.
Hmm.
Like, and the reason why I thought of that is because of Mahjong.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Because Mahjong is only one of them. But you got the Mancala, you got other stuff that every country has their own. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hmm.
So it would be introducing various games from the various Asian nations to the community.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, there's a few questions on COVID just because
Okay.
it's time. Um, So how do you think the COVID-19 pandemic has affected your teaching?
Definitely made teaching harder. Definitely, I mean that's 100%. Even with AP Chemistry last year, we're able to cover the topics as strongly as as I was able to teach our class. You know what I mean? We didn't get to acid base equilibrium. We didn't get to electrochem. However, I was so lucky that we were on phase until chemical equilibrium, and they stopped the AP Chem curriculum last year to exactly to where we stopped. Yeah, so I was so lucky last year in a certain way. But this year, everything's going so slowly because my students who are on face to face are learning faster than my students who are at home.
Mhm.
Again, it goes back again to the fact that maybe it's also me that I worry so much about my students to the point of I slow down because I want to make sure that they're getting it,
Mhm.
or maybe they're not getting it. I don't know. It's hard because people who are at home, there's not if they don't ask questions, I wouldn't know if they're learning or not.
Yeah.
Think about that. I mean, none of your teachers are mind readers, so I
Mhm.
can't read their minds. All I can do is hope that they will ask questions, they will seek help, or you know what I mean, or they will practice as I tell them to practice.
Mhm. I see.
Yeah. And the fact is, what also um, complicates everything is that Houston ISD also, how would I say it, encourages laziness in the whole process. Wherein, you know what I mean, we can't enforce anything to the kids
Mhm.
because of the fact that they always give them excuses, and they're like, oh, they're home, they can do this, they can do that. So it's a matter of like what I was hoping for is balance between between responsibility and accountability, and understanding that there might be some circumstance where they may not they lose their internet, or they may have a bad connection, but there should be a balance between the two, and also accountability.
Yeah.
But the accountability portion, I think, is missing in terms of the HISD policy.
I see.
Yeah.
Are there any changes that you envision about like teaching post-COVID, or things that you think you could take from this?
Definitely, I would say. And I mean, this is something that I wish would happen. That after COVID, all the educators and all, even not just us, but because everything that we do is dictated by the Texas Education Agency and
Mhm.
College Board, there should be a thoughtfulness in terms of what matters most in terms of education.
Mhm.
Because a lot of the curriculum are very broad. You know what I mean? To the point of like there are a lot of unnecessary things that we're teaching or we're enforcing in our classes or curriculum, and there's some things that truly matter in terms of learning.
Mhm.
For example, from approach in teaching chemistry, if you there's a lot of things that you can be very curriculum based, textbook based, or you can balance the textbook or the curriculum with things that matters to kids, that teaches them scientific literacy while they're learning chemistry.
Mhm.
And I think for me, literacy is more important than the content,
Mhm.
especially with the situation we are in now. That's why we have a lot of people who does not believe in science. The literacy piece is actually missing.
I see.
Yeah.
And last question about COVID. If there's like one thing that you think you learned from this whole experience that needs to happen in post-COVID world, or just something that's a positive takeaway, anything, what would it be?
What would it be? Okay. I would be more intentional about how I teach my class. And actually I don't know if I actually, when you were my student, if it comes out that I try to make you guys think of be thoughtful about your own decision and
Mhm.
not just believe everything that people tell you.
Mhm.
And I think that's something I always emphasize because the biggest problem we have in our community society right now is people fall into into like people would fall into false information or believe false information
Mhm.
without thinking it through.
Mhm.
And it's something that I have to make sure that that's part of scientific literacy. You know what I mean? That there are information that are out there, even information that I'm telling people that may not be 100%, accurate because of the fact that I don't have all the information still.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what I mean? And science is a process wherein what we seem to know to be correct today may not be correct tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that, we have to be always worry about the information that we have and be open-minded and start, like, you know what I mean, and believe everything with questions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that I have to emphasize when I teach, and I hope all science teachers will do that, because we are in the United States actually is at the cusp of, like, certain situation right now wherein if we don't act on it really strongly well right now,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to have a big problem in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm mindful of time, so let's do the last section, which
Yes.
is just more like personal perspectives and things like that.
Sure. Yeah.
So are you involved at all with Houston's local Filipino community? And
Other than friends, no, not really. I mean, I wanted to, but I don't have time. I mean, I seriously would want to. And in fact, I tried to one time, but I always am swamped with. Okay, so how I was trying to explain it to actually another teacher. The fact that, for example, if you have 190 students, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you give them a homework or a certain test, and assuming that you would grade that homework 1 minute per student,
Mm-hmm.
that's like 190 minutes already. That's how many hours?
Yeah, wow, yeah.
Okay, and imagine that's only grading. And you don't grade 1 minute per kid. That would be crazy. It would be like 10 minutes at least to grade a paper.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to that, you also have to plan your lesson. You have to do this, you have to do that, especially with virtual learning. We have to create a digital learning. We have to put a digital calendar. Then we have to submit a lesson plan. We have to submit, we have to inform the parents of 504. We have to create a report. It's like nonstop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there is a Filipino community that actually not even community, a Filipino, it's actually an Asian community that I wanted to get involved with. And one of them also is the Asian Democrats Society. I mean, it's a political group of Asian Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's a Democratic Party, Asian that actually reaches out to other Asians.
I see.
Because I know for a fact the importance of political activism when I was in the Philippines and growing up. Remember, I told you about martial law in the Philippines and fighting a dictator, and I've seen that it's more important right now in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
To reach out to other members of our community for them to understand that, hey, it's not just about the party, it's about what's best for our society.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
Yeah. So how would you identify yourself, like as Filipino or American or Filipino American, or has that like kind of changed?
I don't have a Filipino. I lost my Filipino citizenship, right? And I'm actually have a 4 more years and I can retire from teaching. Right. So I'm actually always thinking of that. And then I'm thinking, like, should I retire back in the Philippines? But I don't think so. I'm not gonna go. I can't leave there because the community, and every time I go and visit, I would leave disappointed. You know what I mean? So I would say I'm still Filipino, but I'm Filipino American right now. Yeah.
Has that identity changed over time, or is it?
It did
while
actually.
you were here?
It did. There was a time wherein I was thinking that I'm just gonna go here, work in the United States, and come back in the Philippines.
Yeah.
But as I stayed here, all my friends were here. All my friends are here, and my friends became my family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and plus the fact that I had a lot of bad experience in the Philippines and so on, and I really have, like, even the house that I grew up in, it's gone. So there's really nothing to go back to except my siblings, and my siblings, they also need help. So I'm here. I wish I can take them here, but I can't. You know what I mean? I'm the only person in my family who graduated college.
Mm-hmm.
So it's difficult.
Do you mind me asking what your siblings do?
Yeah, I have a brother who actually. Okay, so I have a sister who got lucky. She's married to the nephew of the King of Brunei.
Mm-hmm.
So very wealthy. So she got lucky. Okay, so yeah, but her son is the one in. Her son actually is my nephew is in full scholarship in France. Then the other son is in Japan, also teaching English. He went to Australia for college, but that was in my sister's side. My older brother, he lives in the house that I have in Philippines, in Pulmulo. That's the house that I used to stay. He's staying there now. I think his kids are all in Dubai. They work in Dubai,
Mhm.
but they're not well off at all. In fact, he stays in the house for free. I
Mhm.
mean, my youngest sister, she's married. Her son actually works he's engineer at the ship oil tanker, and every time he's in Houston, he would visit me. They're okay. They're not like wealthy, but they're okay. But
Mhm.
I have other two siblings that are not doing well.
I see.
One of them is the one who got separated from us when my mom and dad separated. He's the one. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Another sister, actually. She's the sister who, when my mom and dad separated, she was left to our nanny growing up.
Oh.
I used to have a nanny,
Mhm.
and my mom went back to Mindanao, joined us. My dad disappeared, and they left my nanny and my sister in the house
Mhm.
just by themselves, no money, nothing.
Wow.
And the nanny has to beg and so on, and then finally she can't support my sister anymore, so she has to look for my other relatives from father's side to adopt her.
Mhm.
And I didn't see her until high school, college. When I was in college, I finally got to see her, but then it was too late because she has a very low self-esteem. She's very, I mean, she's very insecure because of the fact that of what happened to her. She was passed on from family to family, and now I'm helping her. Yeah,
Okay.
she has a daughter, and I'm helping her family because her husband just lost their job because of COVID in the Philippines.
Mhm. Wow.
Yeah.
Do you have family in Houston?
None, zero, no family here. I have a cousin in Florida. Yeah, but they grew up in Spain. Yeah,
Mhm.
their dad is half Spanish, so they're Spanish citizens, and I'm
Mhm.
close to them. Yeah,
Yeah. Nice.
so she's I would say my only relative in the U.S. So it's just the two of us.
Mhm. Yeah.
I have a half sister who I haven't met.
Mhm.
She lived in Washington. I called her one time, and yeah, we had a conversation about my dad because she was my half sister because of my dad. But she never invited me to her house, and so on. So I like, okay, yeah, it's indeed fine. I'm just reaching out, see if you want to hang out or meet or whatever. Your loss, not mine. Yeah.
Okay. What parts of Filipino culture have you brought with you to life in the States? Like traditions and foods and that kind of stuff.
Tradition and food. I mean, food definitely, all of them. Yeah, yeah. Like yeah, I can cook like a lot of Filipino food. But I try I avoid eating a lot of Filipino food nowadays because they're all high in cholesterol. Except for the egg roll, right? The egg roll. And then tradition. I don't sing karaoke. Filipinos love karaoke. I don't. Even if maybe if I'm drunk, I would just sing karaoke. But no. What else? Maybe being kind, I would say, or thoughtful. That's very Filipino in nature. Being yeah, thinking about other people than yourself. I would say that's
Mhm.
very Filipino.
Yeah.
I mean, what else? Hospitality.
Mhm.
Like even my friends that I barely know, I would invite or I would that's very Filipino
Yeah. Mhm.
also. What other things that I would say very Filipino? I think that's it. Yeah,
Are there holidays or things like that that you celebrate?
which is weird by the way. We celebrate similar to American holidays,
I see.
except there's like local Filipino holidays, but they're more around like Heroes Day.
Mhm.
Yeah, but we do celebrate like November 1st, which is actually Halloween here, but in the Philippines we call it Dia de los Muertos.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's Spanish.
Mhm.
Christmas, New Year. We don't even celebrate Chinese New Year. We celebrate American New Year.
Uh-huh.
It's so weird, right? We're Asians, but we're so American in a lot of things.
Mhm.
We used to have a July 4th celebration. We call it the Filipino American Friendship Day.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I see.
You know, Philippines used to be a colony of the U.S.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, so
I see. So as a teacher, what do you try to instill in your students?
I would say integrity, value of how would I say it? Knowing for a fact that you can be man for others, kind of a Jesuit motto.
Yeah.
I mean that you don't that everything that you do is not only just for yourself,
Hmm.
but it's really for a greater good of everybody.
Yeah.
I really hope that they see that because in the United States, it's a big fight about being individualistic. And if you actually see what's happening in our community right now, like people not wearing masks, people who, I mean, you say that this is my right or whatever, a lot of it boils down to the idea of like, individualism, being individualistic rather than thinking about what's greater good for the community.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think as Asians, I think that value is more Asian though, like
Like
thinking
what?
about community in general rather than self.
Yeah. I see. Has this value that you emphasize like changed over time, like as you gained experience as a teacher, or do you think you've always been like reinforcing that?
I think I think it's more of like not because of you being a teacher. As you get older too, you experience a lot of things in your life, and as the more you experience things, you gain wisdom. You know what I mean? And in the process, you realize like, hey, these things work, these things does not work. These things would benefit people. These things would not benefit people. So you kind of hone your own skills. That's why there's such thing as what we call expertise, right? It's not. In fact, they even said that you don't become expert until after 10 years because of the fact that there are some skills that you truly learn and then you start to see patterns and then you realize that hey, these things are necessary and important. Yeah.
I see. This is a bit more specific, but
Mm.
for your Asian American students who are growing up during like COVID and seeing like rising anti-Asian rhetoric, and do you have any advice for them like navigating this time or even after?
Yeah, and this is actually something I always have a conversation with my class, and I think you've seen that when you were my student. That sometimes I would pause the class and talk about values or
Mhm.
talk about significance of life,
Yeah.
and it's the conversation I always have with my students. This time is about resiliency.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean the sense of the fact that knowing that yeah, so we are in this current situation right now. It's difficult because what I hear from a lot of professionals or even administrators or teachers is always to the side of, yeah, we understand that you're in this situation right now and so on. It's always about to the point of like almost enabling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like poor little you. We understand poor little you, and then that's it. They leave it there without getting to the second point of we understand where you are right now. But on the other hand, we also need to understand that after all of this, we're going to get back to normal. The question is, are you ready for that normal? So how did you prepare yourself when we get back to things, when things are going to get tougher? You know what I mean? And also on the other hand, realizing that yes, you are encountering this situation, but all of us are encountering this situation.
Hmm.
So the question here is, how are we setting up our mindset to be able to survive and be better after this? And then the question I always ask my students is, what are the things that you learn in this situation? Because it's a tough situation, but if you look at the history of the world, this is not the first time that the world has encountered pandemic.
Yeah.
For people who survive, there should be something that they've done to be able to make them better afterwards.
Hmm.
So those are the things and challenges that I think we and I try to encourage my students to start thinking about.
Hmm.
More than chemistry, I always tell them, more than chemistry, it should be like a lesson that you've learned.
Hmm.
Okay. And you're also really preparing yourself because reality is you're going to get to college. And when you get to college, if you don't have the right skill, you're going to be at a disadvantage. Yeah, because Kincaid did not stop teaching. St. John did not stop teaching. And some of your other classmates who are from, tough schools, maybe Clemens High School or whatever, do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
They will have the edge over you
I see.
because that's exactly what life is.
Hmm.
Mm.
Um, do you have any advice for young teachers or teachers just starting out, particularly those with minority backgrounds?
Yes, so there are several. I actually am mentoring a Filipino teacher right now.
Oh, wow.
And the thing I always encourage her is like, be passionate about what you do. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times people will tell you not to do things because of their personal experience. But if you feel and you truly believe that it will benefit your kids, then do it. You know what I mean? And apologize later. Because a lot of times educators are doing things based on rules and laws that are illogical, but will not benefit the students in general.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I mean? So do what you believe is, and you truly believe is right for your students and for for the community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it may be a lot of work, but also like education is not an easy job. Teaching is not an easy job. People think it's easy, but it's a lot of work, a lot of thoughtfulness in terms of what you do.
Mm-hmm.
If you're truly passionate, even myself, like this is my 25th year teaching, 26 actually.
Mm-hmm.
When you won't believe it, right now, even until now, I still create my own lessons. I still design. You know what I mean? My lesson, the way I taught your chemistry class is very different from our way I'm teaching it now.
Yeah.
So teaching is a very dynamic skill. Yeah, because your class is very different from the class I have right now. So if I teach them the same way as I taught your class, then they would, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They would react differently. So
Yeah. I see. What would you say is your proudest achievement in life so far?
I would never thought. I don't know what. I don't know which one. What do you think? Now you know my life story. What do you think is my proudest
I can't
achievement?
make that call.
You cannot make that call. Okay, if I ask you, what would you say?
Hmm. Yeah, that's difficult to say.
Yeah, it's hard, right? It's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, being a teacher itself is, I think, a profession where you get a lot of rewards. I would say, the fact that I have students who are now successful, more successful than I am, makes me proud. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I have a student who is now a doctor. He used to be my student in chemistry. He got sick for one semester. I had to send lessons to him when he was at Texas Medical Center. And second semester, he came back. The following year, he took AP Chem.
Mm-hmm.
That was at KIP. He got to UT Austin in my recommendation. He went to UT Southwestern in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
He graduated last year. He invited me to his graduation, but we canceled because of COVID. Now he's a doctor, and
Yeah.
he's one of those. He's only one of those. I have a student who's now a professor at one of the universities in Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
and he was my student that I taught at that international school. He was my student since he was in fourth grade in chemistry, in science, then in math, then in chemistry, then in physics, and now he's a physics professor
Nice. Wow.
in particle physics. And then I have several others, like several professors now, several doctors, several lawyers. I have a student who's now a lawyer fighting for the undocumented in the borders that are separated from their kids and
Mm-hmm.
parents. So yeah, those are my proudest moments, I would say.
Yeah.
So for me, like the job of a teacher is not limited to one country or one nation. You
Mm-hmm.
are actually a citizen of the world, I would say, in general. And I always tell my students that we think of this planet as a separate, like countries to be separate. But in reality, the planet that we are in is like a spaceship that we're all passengers.
Mm-hmm.
So if we ruin one part of the planet, we're actually destroying the whole planet in general because we have no other place to go. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
So we have to work united. You have to, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's a different perspective, I would say.
It's really insightful.
Mhm.
So do you have any future aspirations or goals, or where do you see yourself?
Enjoy my retirement. Just kidding. Raise enough money so I can retire.
I see.
Yeah. Actually, I have a student who asked me if I want to work with him. He called me about 2 weeks ago. He's now started a business in California.
Hmm.
And I told him like I'm retiring, and he's asking me if I want to work with him. I said, yeah, maybe I'll think of it, because he wanted to go into clothing business, and he's doing. And I told him I can connect him with some shops in the Philippines who can create who can do the, you know what I mean, the who can create those clothes for him and then ship it. Like, remember, everything we have here is made in China, made in Japan, made in Indonesia, or made, you know what I mean. So for production, I don't know. So we'll see.
Hmm.
I have a lot of skills other than teaching.
Yes. Last question. How would you like to be remembered?
That's a nice. I mean, I always, you know, I think of that too every now and then. Like, you know, if I die, what would people say
Hmm.
in the eulogy? And I always think of that because I remember Miss your English teacher. Did you
Miss
have her?
Ballard? Yeah.
Hmm?
Miss Ballard?
Yeah, did you have her?
No, but
You never
yeah.
had her. Okay, so I
Yeah.
was just thinking of that. Like, you know, what would people say when I? Maybe they could say like I'm kind or I care. That's
Hmm.
it. That I'm passionate and I care about every person that I actually meet or teach.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's really sweet. Yeah.
What do you think? Do I care?
Yes, you do.
I hope.
Yeah, for sure you do. Um, so is there anything else that you'd like to share or add that we haven't talked about yet? Or
I mean, I'm not sure. Like, I don't know. It's like it just, well, you know, you take life one day at a time. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
that's how we survive in like difficult times. And
Mhm.
always you look forward to, I mean, the future. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And be smart about your decisions, I would say.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my question for you, now
Mhm.
listening to the story I told you, now do you understand now why I teach the way I teach?
Yes, I do.
Why I do in school?
Yeah, it's very insightful to listen to. Yeah.
You know, I hope so. I mean, I don't know, but nobody knows the some parts of my stories, right? My life. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Right. Well, thank you for your time. I'm gonna just stop the recording right